This is Pastor Ryan. Welcome back to my YouTube channel.
Last week, the massacre in Atlanta left 8 people dead. The alleged killer, a white person, 7 of his victims, women, 6 of them, Asians. And we have been grieving and lamenting.
A few days ago, same thing happened again. This time in Boulder, Colorado. 10 people were killed, including a police officer. Some men, some women,
All white people.
were victims.
Do we grieve and lament for these people as well?
We grieve and lament just the same. We should. Even if
All the victims are white and the alleged killer is not white.
as several social media personalities hurriedly assume
That the killer was white person, or rather, killer had to be a white person.
one famous person said, quote, "The Atlanta shooting was not even a week ago. Violent white men are the greatest terrorist threat to our country," end of a quote. No, it is not okay that you think you are morally right, however one defines it, but factually incorrect. If you accuse individuals or collectives with wrong facts, then that in and of itself is wrong. Jesus says in John 7:24, "Stop judging by mere appearances and make the right judgment." At the very least, that would mean that we ought to have all the facts before accusing, something I too am guilty of doing. Yeah, we should grieve and lament just the same. Understandably, the 2 recent massacres involving guns have rekindled Senate Democrats to pass an assault weapons ban. Whether it is politically driven or not, you can certainly appreciate the sentiment. How I feel about gun? Well, I don't own a gun. Some people have suggested I should buy a gun, but I never felt the need for it. But I lived in Mexico for 11 years, and this is what I saw in Mexico. Gun is absolutely prohibited in Mexico. It's illegal to own a gun, and they apply this law pretty seriously. A friend of mine, Luis, told me one time that his grandfather, I believe, an old man, was actually arrested by police and was put in a jail called Cerezo. It's penitentiary, and I'll tell you more about this prison a little later on, because he owned old gun that doesn't even work. It's a family heirloom. However, there are guns, and these are big guns, and they're owned by the narcotraficos. These are scary people who are responsible for pushing drugs into our country, and their guns are the state of the art, much bigger, faster, and powerful than any guns police own. That's Mexico. All the bad guys have the guns. So, is it the guns that's the problem? Well, if it is not the primary source of our problem. I can assure you of that. 2 people can say the same thing, but the effect is so different. I can say, this is not a gun problem, but a heart problem. You may say, yeah, there he goes again, a conservative, Bible-thumping Christian. But upon finding out that that exact statement was made by Sherilyn Birdsong, the wife of Ricky Birdsong, the first black coach of the Northwestern men's basketball team, said after the murder of her husband
By white supremacists.
you probably think a little differently. Yes, it is her quote. This is not a gun problem, but a heart problem. No doubt she was echoing the belief espoused by Prophet Jeremiah in the book that bears his name, chapter 17, verse 9. The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? So what happened in Atlanta and Boulder, Colorado? Is it a hate crime? Is it the epitome of gun violence?
They may be all true, but
Let me introduce you to another term that was used at the Nuremberg trials from 1945 to 1946 that tried Nazi war criminals. The charge was crime against humanity. Does that diminish what was done against Jewish people by not specifying that the primary victims of Nazi atrocities were the Jews? Lest that may happen, we immediately declare the Holocaust was an unspeakable crime committed against the people of Jewish descent. And we should always add that. But before we are Jews or Koreans or Mexicans or Americans, we are all humans. John Donne, that famous poem, no man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. Any man's death diminishes me because I'm involved in mankind. Are you going to dismiss that belief espoused by this European white male as part of white privilege nonsense? Somehow trying to maintain the power over non-white females and every other gender categories growing by the minute? There certainly exists such thought, but not this one. I speak as one whose basic assumptions in life is centered on God's eternal word, scriptures. Based on that, all humans share the same problem, a corrupt heart, an inclination to do evil, and the same fate, that is without a divine intervention. Human intervention is useless to cure the intrinsic problem of the heart. Jesus said all evil thought proceeds from the heart. How do you cure this problem of the heart? Social science has no answer for it. Believe you me. There is only one answer for that, and that's Jesus Christ. 2 Thessalonians 2:13 says, we ought to always thank God because God chose you, us, as first fruits to be saved through the sanctifying work of the Spirit and through belief in the truth. You know how we can be changed? You know how hearts can be transformed? By the gospel of Jesus Christ, that he took our sin and nailed it to the cross to die for our sin. And it's the Holy Spirit that comes in and begins the work of sanctifying us. Now, of course, that's the beginning. That is a critical beginning. And there should follow discipleship. There should follow the studying of the word and praying and all the things that need to go in to continue to grow in the grace of God. But the heart will not change without the gospel of Jesus Christ, the belief in the truth, and without the regenerating power of the Holy Spirit. Let me end with an example of that. The man you see right now, his name is Javier Colmenares. Let me share with you about this man and how I met him. Now, the picture you see right now, that man is Pastor Javier, another Javier, Almanza. He was and still is one of my best friends in Mexico. He was the senior pastor of Jerusalem Baptist Church in Chihuahua, Mexico.
2005 or 2006?
Our church recruited about 30 men to go to this prison called Zerezo. This prison is geared toward retraining people so that they will be able to go back to society and earn a good living. And these are hardcore criminals, and we went there Monday through Friday with different teams, and I was part of the Friday team.
And this was the ID issued by the Zerezo prison for us to be able to enter it. Anyway.
And we went in there and we taught the Bible, we prayed with them, and about a year later, there birthed a church. And we called it the Jerusalem Church of Captives. And Javier was one of the fruits of that ministry. Now, I was in the preaching rotation, so one Sunday I went to preach with Pastor Javier. When we arrived at this prison complex, we saw Javier outside the prison. So we both were surprised and shocked. So we asked Colmenares, hey, what are you doing here? Well, he got released that day. It was Sunday, obviously. So he said, great. So we told him, you wait here because we have to go in and it's going to take 3 hours, like 1 hour security check back and forth and another hour and a half, of time of worship and all. But he said, no, well, I want to go in because he's a part of that church. So we knew he couldn't go in, but he came in anyway. And he asked the guard, can I go back in? Of course, they said, Don't be ridiculous. You can't go in there. You just got released. So he had to wait outside for us until we were done. And then when we came out, Pastor Javier took him and he found for him a hotel room. And that began a new life for Javier, where eventually the church made him the custodian of the church. That church had over 400 people. And one day when I saw him with all these keys to the church, it just caught my attention. Would you trust this man with this many keys or any keys of your church? This hardcore criminal, he was in that prison for 12 years for narco trafficking, drug trade.
Note that Javier gave me his full blessing when I asked him whether I could share his story. And he said, do it all for the glory of God. He wants his story to be told, the power of God to change our lives. Anyway, would you trust him with all the keys to your church?
I think you wouldn't. But this church trusted him because he changed. Most of the criminals who get rehabilitated, so-called rehabilitated, they go back. He stayed true to his faith. Right after that, I left Chihuahua, but I went back to that church several times after I came back to the United States, and he was still serving as custodian. But the second time I visited, I asked one of the assistant pastors, Pastor Daniel, how's Javier doing, Colmenares? And he said, he's doing okay, although he made a mistake. He did something he shouldn't have. What did he do? Well, I guess he got drunk one night. Oh, he did? But the church forgave him and said, everybody can make a mistake, and they did not fire him. Oh my goodness. This man experienced God's grace again. He was so happy. And he was just saying, I want to live for the Lord and I want to proclaim his name. And the next time I visited, about a year or two later, I said, where's Javier? And Pastor Daniel told me he had passed away. He said he had organs of 70-year-old and he's no longer with us, but he's with the Lord. You know who changed him? Not programs, not education, although those are good things, but they are useless to change heart. Only the gospel of Jesus Christ, through the Holy Spirit, can change us. Yes, we mourn the passing of 10 human beings in Colorado. Before we identify their racial, their ethnic, and their gender identities, we say they are human beings who bear the image of God. May God have mercy on America.